Hey everyone, welcome back to the deep dive. We always love digging into the material you send our way, and this time it's been particularly interesting. There's a clear theme in what you've all been sending about success and what it takes to really get there.
Yeah, definitely. And I think what's so fascinating is that it's not all the usual stuff about hard work and the right strategies, though those are definitely important. Your sources keep circling back to these more internal barriers, these often hidden habits that can really sabotage your progress.
Right, like you could be putting in the effort, you could have the skills, but these underlying patterns, they're almost like a secret drag holding you back.
Exactly. One of your texts actually calls them hidden habits that sabotage your success, which I thought was a really powerful way to put it.
It totally is. So in this deep dive, we're going to unpack 14 of these habits that we've identified from all the great stuff you sent us. Our mission here is to kind of shine a light on these potential stumbling blocks so you can spot them in your own life and then figure out how to navigate around them.
Sounds good to me.
So let's kick things off with something that's often seen as a positive trait. Perfectionism. On the surface, striving for excellence, wanting to do your best, it seems like a good thing, right?
Absolutely. But I think what's so insightful in the text is the way it distinguishes between that healthy drive for excellence and what it calls this illusion of being flawless. It really highlights how this pursuit of an ideal, this need for everything to be perfect, can actually backfire in a big way.
Oh yeah, totally. Because that kind of pressure to get everything just right, it can lead to some really unhelpful behaviors. Like in the text, it specifically talks about procrastination and that deep fear of failure that can come with perfectionism. You're so afraid of making even the smallest mistake that you either can't bring yourself to start at all or you're constantly delaying things.
It's like you get paralyzed by that fear of not being perfect.
Exactly. And if we look at the research here, the work by Flett and Hewitt back in 2002 really adds to this. Their findings show that this type of perfectionism isn't just linked to procrastination, but to even bigger problems like high anxiety, low self-esteem, and even burnout.
Yeah, so it's not just about getting things done on a time. It's about the real impact it has on your well-being and your mental health.
Right. And it's kind of ironic, right? You think this thriving for flawlessness is what's going to make you successful, but it actually ends up holding you back.
Absolutely.
But the good news is that the text doesn't just leave you hanging with the problem. It actually offers some really helpful ways to deal with this.
Yeah, for sure.
Like it talks about setting goals that are actually realistic, achievable, and breaking down those big, overwhelming tasks into smaller, more manageable chunks.
That makes a huge difference.
It really does. And maybe even more importantly, it's about changing how you view mistakes. Instead of seeing them as these huge failures, it encourages you to reframe them as opportunities to learn and grow.
Right. It's that whole growth mindset idea, embracing the learning process.
Exactly. So for everyone listening, think about this. How can you be kinder to yourself when you make mistakes? How can you view those missteps as valuable lessons instead of reasons to beat yourself up?
Such a good point.
Okay, so speaking of things that could really stall your progress, let's move on to another big one, procrastination. I feel like everyone struggled with this at some point, right?
Oh, absolutely. I know I have. And the source doesn't sugarcoat it either. It straight up calls it the thief of time.
Oof, yeah, that's a good one.
Because it really is, right? You lose so much precious time when you procrastinate, and it creates this domino effect, doesn't it? Missed deadlines, then you're stressed because you're behind, and then the quality of your work suffers because you're rushing to catch up.
Yeah, it's a vicious cycle. And there's a connection here back to what we were just talking about with perfectionism, isn't there?
Totally.
Because the text points out that fear of failure and that need to get things perfect, those are some of the big reasons why we put things off. Again, it's that fear of not measuring up that makes us avoid the task altogether.
And if we look at the research again, Steele's study from 2007 is really interesting here. It suggests that procrastination is linked to low self-control and a tendency to act impulsively. Which means it's not just a matter of laziness. It's often about managing these uncomfortable feelings that come up around certain tasks. That feeling of being overwhelmed or that fear of judgment.
So it's like we're not just being lazy, we're actually trying to avoid discomfort. That's a really interesting way to think about it. So if you're listening and you're like, yep, that's me, I procrastinate all the time, what can you actually do about it?
Well, the source actually offers a couple of really cool strategies. The first one is called the 5-minute rule. It might sound too simple to be true, but basically you just commit to working on that task you've been avoiding for just 5 minutes.
5 minutes, that's it.
Yep, that's it. And the idea is that often Just starting is the hardest part. Once you get going, you might find that you actually want to keep working on it.
Oh, I like that. And it takes the pressure off, right? It's not this huge daunting task anymore. It's just 5 minutes.
Exactly. And the other strategy is one we've touched on before, breaking down large tasks into smaller, more manageable chunks. This can be so helpful because when you're faced with a huge project, it can feel completely overwhelming. But if you divide it into smaller steps, it suddenly feels a lot more doable.
Right. It's like you're tricking your brain into taking action. Okay, so now let's shift gears and talk about something a little more subtle, but incredibly powerful. Negative self-talk. This is that inner voice we all have that's constantly commenting on our thoughts and actions. And sometimes, let's be honest, it can be pretty brutal.
It can be brutal. This source calls it the silent saboteur, which I think is such a perfect description because it's often happening beneath the surface, right? We're not always fully aware of how these negative thoughts are impacting our confidence and our motivation. But over time, those little digs, those I'm not good enough or I'll never be able to do this thoughts, they can really wear you down.
It's like having this constant stream of negativity playing in the background of your mind. And Beck's research from 1995 really drives this point home. It highlights that negative self-talk isn't just about feeling a bit down. It's a key contributor to more serious issues like depression and lack of motivation.
Absolutely. And the good news is that we're not stuck with these negative thought patterns. We can actually change them, which is really empowering when you think about
It
it.
is, so how do we do that?
Well, the source talks about actively challenging that negative dialogue. One way is through practicing positive affirmations, so consciously replacing those self-critical thoughts with more supportive and encouraging statements. And it's not just about saying positive things, it's about genuinely believing them.
Right, so instead of saying, I'm going to fail, you might say, I'm capable of learning and growing.
Exactly. And another key piece is learning to question those negative beliefs. Are they actually true? Or are they just assumptions you've been holding on to for a long time?
Like, where's the evidence?
Yeah, exactly. Where's the evidence for these negative thoughts?
Okay, so moving on, let's talk about a mindset that can really limit your potential. The scarcity mindset. It's this way of looking at the world where you believe that resources and opportunities are limited, like there's not enough to go around.
Right. The text describes it as this feeling that everything is limited and hard to obtain. And this belief can then lead to some pretty unhelpful behaviors like hoarding resources, being afraid to share with others, and being really risk averse, even when taking a risk could lead to something great.
It's like you're constantly in survival mode, focused on protecting what you have instead of looking for ways to grow and expand.
Exactly. And Shaw, Milanathan, and Shafir's research from 2012 actually found that this scarcity mindset doesn't just affect your attitude, it can actually reduce your cognitive capacity.
Wow, really?
Yeah, it's like your brain is so preoccupied with this idea of not having enough that it has less mental bandwidth for other things like making good decisions.
So you're not only feeling stressed and anxious, but you're literally less able to think clearly? That's wild.
It is. So the key to overcoming this is to cultivate what's called an abundance mindset.
Okay, abundance mindset. Tell me more about that.
So instead of focusing on what's lacking, you intentionally shift your attention to the opportunities and resources that are available. And a great way to do this is through gratitude, taking the time to appreciate what you already have. Even just writing down 3 things you're grateful for each day can make a big difference.
I love that. It's such a simple but powerful practice. Okay, next up, let's talk about a habit that can really prevent us from taking responsibility for our actions. Blaming others.
Yeah, it's so easy to do, isn't it? When things go wrong, it's tempting to point the finger at someone else. But the text makes a really important point. When we blame others, we rob ourselves of the opportunity to learn and grow.
Right, because if it's always someone else's fault, then we never have to look at our own role in the situation. We don't have to examine our own behavior or consider what we could have done differently.
And the research on external locus of control really backs this up. Rotter's work back in 1966 found that people who tend to blame external forces for their outcomes often report lower levels of life satisfaction and have less success in achieving their goals. It's like they feel powerless to change their own lives.
So if we're always playing the victim, we're essentially giving away our power. So what's the alternative?
Well, the key here is to cultivate a sense of ownership. This means acknowledging your part in both your successes and your failures, and using those experiences, both the good and the bad, as opportunities to learn and improve.
So it's not about dwelling on blame. It's about saying, okay, what happened? What was my role in it? And what can I do differently next time?
Exactly. It's about taking that responsibility and focusing on solutions.
Okay, now let's tackle another big one, fear of failure. This is something that I think holds so many people back from pursuing their dreams.
Oh, absolutely. And the text describes how paralyzing this fear can be. It can prevent you from taking risks, from putting yourself out there, from even trying new things.
Yeah, and the crazy thing is that the fear of failing can actually lead to self-sabotage. The research by Carver and Shire back in 1998 found that when people are really afraid of not succeeding, they sometimes unconsciously do things that undermine their own efforts. It's like they're almost trying to confirm their fears.
Wow, that's fascinating. It's like we create a self-fulfilling prophecy. So how do we break free from this fear?
Well, the text suggests reframing failure. Instead of seeing it as this ultimate defeat, see as feedback. Every time something doesn't work out, it gives you valuable information about what to do differently next time.
It's like you're gathering data.
Exactly. And the other thing is to start taking small, calculated risks. By gradually stepping outside of your comfort zone, you build up your resilience and your confidence. You start to see that failure isn't the end of the world.
And you learn so much in the process.
Absolutely. Okay, let's move on to another habit that can be really tricky to navigate. People-pleasing.
Ugh, yes. And I think this is something that a lot of people struggle with, especially in our culture, where being helpful and putting others first is often seen as a virtue.
Totally. But as the text points out, there's a dark side to people-pleasing. When you constantly prioritize everyone else's needs above your own, you end up neglecting your own well-being, your own goals, your own values.
Right. And it can lead to burnout, resentment, and this feeling of being completely depleted. It's like you're constantly running on empty.
Exactly. And the research by Baumeister and Larry in 1995 found a link between chronic people-pleasing and low self-worth. It can really impact how you see yourself.
So how do we break free from this pattern?
Well, the key is to start setting healthy boundaries. This means understanding what your limits are, communicating them clearly to others, and then sticking to them.
Which is definitely easier said than done.
It is, and for people pleasers, learning to say no is probably the most challenging part. But the text offers a really cool reframe here, recognizing that saying no to someone else often means saying yes to yourself.
Yes,
Saying yes to your own time, your own energy, your own needs.
I love that. It's a powerful shift in perspective.
Okay, so let's talk about a mental habit that can be really frustrating. Overthinking.
Ugh, overthinking is the worst. You just get stuck in this loop of analyzing and reanalyzing everything, but never actually making a decision or taking action.
Right? It's paralysis by analysis. And the text describes how overthinking leads to indecision, procrastination, and just a lot of unnecessary stress and anxiety.
It's exhausting.
It is. And Dolan Hostima's research in 2000 showed that this kind of repetitive thinking, this rumination, can actually make negative emotions worse.
So it's not just annoying, it's actually bad for our mental health.
Exactly. So what can we do to quiet that overthinking mind?
Well, one strategy the text suggests is setting time limits for making decisions. So instead of agonizing over every little detail, give yourself a set amount of time to gather information, weigh your options, and then just make a choice.
It's about being decisive, right?
Exactly. And another helpful practice is mindfulness. This is about training your mind to focus on the present moment without judgment. It helps you get out of that endless loop of what ifs and could have beens.
Okay, so we're nearing the end of our deep dive here, but we have one more really important habit to discuss: lack of discipline.
This one's huge because you can have the best ideas, the grandest ambitions, but without discipline, those dreams are likely to just stay dreams.
It's that old saying, vision without action is just a daydream. And the text really emphasizes the role of consistent effort in achieving success. It's not about being perfect. It's about showing up and doing the work day after day, even when it's not easy or glamorous.
And the research on willpower, like the work by Baumeister and Tierney in 2011, is really relevant here. They found that self-control, which is essential for discipline, is like a muscle that can get tired. But the good news is that, like any muscle, you can strengthen it with practice.
So how do we build up that discipline muscle?
Well, one way is through creating routines. Having set times for certain activities, like working out or working on a project, can make it easier to stick with them because they become automatic. You're not relying on willpower alone.
Right, it takes the decision-making out of it.
Exactly. And another cool technique is habit stacking. This is where you link a new habit you're trying to build with an existing habit that's already strong. So for example, if you always make a cup of coffee in the morning, maybe you decide that right after you make your coffee, you're going to meditate for 5 minutes.
So you're using the existing habit as a trigger for the new one. I like that. Okay, last but not least, let's talk about a habit that can be incredibly damaging to your self-esteem: comparing yourself to others.
Oof, this one is so prevalent, especially in the age of social media where everyone is curating their best selves online. But as the text highlights, this constant comparison game can really breed resentment and make you feel inadequate.
It's like you're always looking over your shoulder, worrying about what everyone else is doing instead of focusing on your own path.
And Festinger's research on social comparison theory way back in 1954 showed that this kind of comparison often leads to dissatisfaction and decreased motivation. It's like you're constantly measuring yourself against an impossible standard.
Right. And the solution here is to shift your focus inward. Instead of getting caught up in the comparison game, celebrate your own progress. Recognize your achievements, no matter how small they seem, and set goals that are aligned with your own values, your own aspirations, your own definition of success.
It's about running your own race.
Exactly. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I think a really important theme emerges from all these hidden habits we've discussed. It's that success isn't just about the external things, the skills, the strategies, the hard work. It's also, and perhaps even more importantly, about these internal patterns, these often unconscious habits that can either support us or sabotage us.
Absolutely. And the first step to changing these habits is becoming aware of them. So for everyone listening, we encourage you to reflect on which of these habits might be holding you back.
Think about which ones resonate with you, where you might be getting in your own way. And remember, awareness is the first step to change.
Exactly. So as you move forward, we leave you with this final thought. Considering your current goals and dreams, which one of these habits, if you were to consciously work on it, could have the biggest positive impact on your life? Which one could unlock the most potential for you?
It's a question worth pondering. Thanks for joining us for another deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.